Hey there, my name is Jay. In 2022, I thru hiked the Appalachian Trail starting January 28th when it was quite cold and finishing August 20th when it was quite warm. I actually have a chart of the temperature change from the beginning where it was really cold and kind of warmed up and leveled out. And so basically I had to have gear for a variety of seasons. And thought I'd go over how my sleeping gear system and my tent and everything worked out. It's basically the big three items and related. And I'll just go over all those. I'm not going to go into detail about them because I made videos about what I brought, but I'll go over the changes and how I got them to work for me. First things first, most of you, if you watched, I started the trail with an Altaplex, which is a one-person tent. And most people would say a one-man tent is too crowded, but I actually was fine in the Altaplex. There was like a little diamond wedge in the side, so you can kind of put your stuff. And the smaller your tent, and you stay in it sometimes for a while, you get used to it. And you get used to arranging your gear so it works out okay. And honestly, I've slept in a duplex many nights by myself because I used a duplex for the entire PCT and the entire Arizona Trail, and I was fine with it. In fact, I really enjoyed the room, but it was too roomy. I don't know if you get that. But the Altaplex I thought was great. Only downside for me was I had to use an extender for my trekking poles, and that added a little extra weight as well. But before Tina caught up, my girlfriend, well, I ordered a duplex. So, yep, I bought a new tent on trail. Of course, that took a big chunk of change, and I bought a footprint for it as well. I did use the same tent, they're stakes, but the duplex is what we use for the rest of the trail. And, well, sadly enough, Tina carried the duplex the whole time because I don't know, I had a whole bunch of extra camera gear, and she's a stronger hiker than me. So she carried this, and she made me not feel bad about her carrying it because this was still lighter than her tent, and she sent that home. So this was what we used, and two people in a duplex. We aren't big. She's 5'2", I'm 5'6", and by the time we were using this, we were pretty skinny, so it wasn't much of an issue. There's one other thing I want to add about my tent choice. They were both single wall tents, and there's so many people, like I've seen them from years past, and even this year's videos, people talking about their worry about condensation, but it's not really that bad. Tina and I both slept in a duplex together, and we had rain many nights. We had to close all four of the vestibule doors. Generally, if I'm by myself, if I know it's not going to rain, we always keep at least two of them open, like two closed for privacy and two open just to keep the airflow going. And we never really had super bad condensation. The only times we did was when it was pretty much raining all the time. And yes, when it rains and there's condensation, it's going to sprinkle some water on your face and you wake up. But I always had a rag with me and I always just wiped it down. I woke up, wiped it down over the face because that's where the bulk of the condensation is. Towards the feet, not so much. And then just squeeze it out and then just go back to sleep. And at most, maybe twice a night, I had to do that once. But the condensation thing isn't as bad as people may think. It could be bad if you close all the doors all the time, and if you use too warm a sleeping system and you're just sweating. And if you're sweating, your body's just emitting all that extra moisture, and that's going to make condensation worse. My philosophy with winter camping or condensation is just be comfortable. If you're too warm, your body's going to release moisture to cool down, and that moisture is going to get your sleeping bag wet as well as create condensation in the tent. So if you try to keep yourself just comfortable, your sleeping bag won't get as wet because the moisture doesn't collect at the top, and there won't be as much condensation in your tent. And people with double wall tents, you see them always hanging out their rain flies to dry because they get wet and they have the same problem. They'll actually sprinkle water in your face as well. And when it's cold and there's condensation, they'll also freeze. The same thing, except you have a little bit of space and a bug net protecting you. But if you push against it, I mean, your bug net will get wet and anything you touch will get wet as well. So to me, I think single wall tents, the condensation issue isn't that big of a problem. So you shouldn't worry about it. again, just don't don't sleep hot. If you're sleeping hot where you feel like you're warm, your body just emitting extra moisture, and that's gonna cause extra condensation that you didn't really need. One thing that helped with both of us being in a duplex is we both use the same sleeping pad. We both use the 4-foot Thermarest Xlite. It's a very short one, like my arms are longer than it is. But because it's a shorter one, we were able to put our backpacks at our feet. That's what I always did, put my backpack at the feet, prop my feet up on the backpack, and it just made managing the sleeping pad easier. Just folding it up and blowing it up because it's shorter. When it's really long, like I was using an Xtherm on a ZT, and it was great having the entire duplex to be able to fold it. But when you have a 4-foot sleeping pad, it actually works out just fine. And this sleeping pad is what I used throughout the entire trail. Even when it was down to 14 degrees, I was perfectly comfortable. I did have one hole that I had to patch up, and Tina did have one hole that we patched up, but then she had another leak towards the very end of the hike, fortunately, that just we couldn't patch up because it was in the valve area. But for me, I love this sleeping pad. It's about 8 ounces. Some people say it's all crinkly, but once I go to sleep, I'm asleep and I don't move too much. But if I'm awake enough to move, I'm already awake and it didn't bother me too much. I believed the noisiest sleeping pads were people that use some kind of, I don't know what they use for a ground cloth, but every time they moved, they rubbed and it just made this like rubber on rubber sound and it was noisy. And for this, it wasn't that noisy really. If you think crinkling is bad, just use it for a while and actually the crinkling goes away. This just still sounds a little crinkly because it's kind of dried out. I haven't used it in a while. And I did not use my breath to blow it up ever. I always used a blow up bag to blow it up. And I did use my breath to finish it off, like getting a little more full, like to be comfortable. But overall, I love this sleeping pad. I used one on the entire PCT and well, most of the PCT. I did switch to an Xtherm when I was in the Sierra Nevadas, and I love it. 4 foot, it's a way to go. If you're shorter, cut the weight, go 8 ounces, go 4 feet if you can. Don't blame me though if you don't like it, but I think it works great. And it's definitely worth a shot to help reduce weight. And it just makes it much more comfortable setting up in a tent as well. And if you blow it up by mouth, it takes less breath. So that's really nice. On the AZT, I did take an Xtherm with me, which is much longer. But I did find on the Arizona Trail, it was too warm for me. That's why I didn't bring it on the AT at all, even in the very beginning. And the newer Xlites have a higher R value than the older ones. So I felt I was never on the trail was my back cold at all. It was mostly like my face, core. So great sleeping pad. Here's my blow up bag for it. The only complaint about it, I had about my sleeping pad, unfortunately Tina's was perfect. She got, when you buy one of those, you get like a blow up sack, and hers fit perfectly. Not too light, not too loose. When I got mine, the sack that came with it was way too tight. I couldn't get it on. So I bought a different one. And it's way too loose. So I actually put a bunch of tape on it to hold it in place. There's a carbon fiber tape there and some duct tape. And that was the only way I can get it to stay on at all. And I did have to kind of refresh the tape every now and then, but that's the only way it worked. But it worked. It just was not the best. The ghetto solution. But with backpacking, you make do. You adapt and you get by, right? And here is my pillow. I use this pillow on all the trails so far. I am getting rid of it, not because I don't like it. I love this pillow. In fact, I wish my home pillow was exactly the same because I just love the way it supports my head. But I found that I used my mouth, of course, to blow it up. And as I deflate it, you could feel water droplets squirting out because there's way too much moisture in here. It's it's done its job, and it's pretty disgusting how oily. Can you see it? Especially in the middle. It's not the cleanest. But it's done its job, and I didn't lose it. Oddly enough, never popped, and it's just so light, just super light, but super comfy. I really like this pillow, so I'm gonna be sad to say goodbye, but I am gonna order the same model. On trail, I did have a bag liner. I brought it originally, and I didn't use it the first night, but I did use it a lot after that, most nights. And I used to joke like, how much can that add, really? And I thought I tested it, but it didn't feel like much. But it adds quite a bit of warmth. If you are going into winter and you expect at least the first few weeks to be really cold, I would say get one of these so that your sleeping bag will still be good for the few weeks after that. Because you could just carry this, and when you're done with it, just mail it home and use your sleeping bag after that. But this, I really enjoyed it. And if I had to start in January or February again on the AT, I would bring it with me, definitely. And I didn't use this to keep my sleeping bag clean necessarily. It was purely for warmth, and it did a great job at that. So definitely get one of these. This is one of those Thermalite Reactor ones, and I got the ones that's a short. This is one of those dual zone ones where the top part's warmer. It's got that red. Then the hips and legs aren't as warm, and then the feet are warmer with the red. So you can use, they use slightly thinner fabric in the black area. That way it reduces weight and keeps most of the weight where you want the warmth, which is the red area. And I thought it worked really well. One thing I don't like about these is that you have to slide into them. You can't get in like a sleeping bag. So you have to slide in, and that's not the most fun, but for the warmth, it's pretty good. One change I made on the trail in the beginning, I brought a 20 degrees Fahrenheit Revelation from Enlightened Equipment, and I carried that until about trail days when I gave Tina my quilt, and she used it for the rest of the hike. And I still wonder like how I survived that first night. 14 degrees, no liner, no base layer, that 20-degree bag. And she used it throughout the summer and she was fine. Me, I switched to a 50-degree non-down insulated quilt from Enlightened Equipment. It's the synthetic lining in the middle. It's actually the same exact material they use to make the puffy, and it's in a quilt. And basically it's like a sheet of the insulation inside, so it shifts around a lot. I wish they put a couple of stitches in it so the top wouldn't slide off of the insulation so much, but it packs tiny and it's actually decently warm. And I got the 50-degree, and that managed to get me through the rest of the trail. Again, with the 50-degree, I had the option always of wearing my t-shirt and long sleeve shirt and putting the puffy over me if it got cold. So 50-degree was good enough for me, and it cut a little bit of weight, and it definitely cut bulk because it's quite small. And this isn't even compacted down, it's really tiny. So that was one change I made, and it was worth it. It was actually really good. For maybe a week or two, I did carry I think it was like a $9 blanket from Walmart I found. Something cheap. It was really soft. And I really did miss it after I got rid of it to use this. Because this isn't as soft. It sticks more. But it's a little warmer, so I'm glad and much lighter than the other one, so I'm glad I carried this one. But a lot of you, if you're just starting a thru hike, there's a lot of worry, and you worry about things a lot. You worry about what you're going to eat. But once you're on a thru hike and you're in it long enough, you just stop caring. You just do whatever works. Eat whatever. Use a $9 Walmart blanket for a while. No biggie. But this was mostly to reduce weight and a little bulk, but weight was the main reason I got a thinner one. But that $9 Walmart blanket probably could have gotten me through the rest of the trail, I think. So, yeah. A lot of the key items, like my phone and my GoPro and my glasses and just random stuff, I kept in a fanny pack. This is the fanny pack from Hyperlite, I believe. Yeah, it's Hyperlite. There's a little H there. But it's a little bigger. If it's big, you'll fill it. And that's the other thing. But I loved having a fanny pack. I purchased the fanny pack maybe towards the end of the AT or PCT, And on the Arizona Trail, I used a fanny pack throughout. And this one, I used this fanny pack throughout and loved it. There's a separate component that where I kept my phone all the time, and it was tucked away, so it was pretty protected from any rain. So I never had any issues with my phone, like the charge port getting wet or something like that. And I put bulk of my stuff in here, like my camera, and I actually don't even know what was in the right. I think I put snacks, like 2 snacks at a time. Most of the snacks were in my hip pocket, but I put like 1 or 2 in here, and worked out great. I always kept my wallet in here. There's a little clip on here so you can clip your wallet to it so it never falls out while you're doing things. And when you're in town, it's big enough that you can just drape it over your shoulder and kind of carry it like that. So you have a wallet, something to hold things while you're just walking around town, and a loaner clothes with no pockets or anything like that. Throughout the entire trail, I also had a pack cover, which is just a Dyneema pack cover from Zpacks. And these are expensive, but they weigh nothing, and I use it all the time. It doesn't necessarily keep your backpack completely wet or completely dry, although it kind of does. If you combine this with an umbrella, the umbrella kind of leans over the back of the pack cover, and you could keep your backpack mostly dry the entire time. The only parts that may get wet are the hip pockets from blowing rain. Shoulder straps stay dry because you're high enough under the umbrella. And sometimes the bottom of the backpack might get wet a little. But overall, I love my pack cover, and I'll always bring one with me anytime. If I expect rain at all, I'll bring one with me. My backpack. This is my Zpacks Arc Haul. It's a medium, I believe. And right now, it's not arced at all, but I really enjoyed this backpack. Once, I knew its weaknesses because I had one in the first 1,800 miles of the PCT. And once I put the shoulder pads in, worked out great. Shoulder pads and the lumbar pad, always had that, because for some reason the hip belt, there's a metal bar on the back. That hurts once it flattens out. Once you lose your cushion and once you lose some of this cushion, it starts to hurt. So I'm glad I installed this, and it's actually feeling quite thin because it's had so much pressure on it for so long. As you can see here, there's a little bit of duct tape over here because for some reason this thing kept ripping on me on both sides. So that I had to keep maintaining. I had to stitch it with floss, keep duct taping so it wouldn't keep ripping apart. The one thing about these new Zpacks Arc Hauls compared to the old ones is they don't use string to attach the hip pockets. They use these metal hooks, and they keep falling off. They pop off or they bend and then they pop off for good. And I was always afraid they're going to break. Fortunately, a couple times they bent back, but they just keep falling off. So it wasn't as good a solution as what they had. I just noticed here, this piece of string that holds the fanny pack in, it's almost down to nothing right here. It was going to rip any second. There's probably 10% of what was holding it up before holding it, so that's a good thing. I did introduce this clip. I bought some of these at I forgot what store, but I hooked it into this. There's a loop over here with the medium marker. I hooked it into that so it kind of absorbs some of the weight. Glad I did, otherwise this thing probably would have not lasted because it's obviously it's falling apart. That's the thing with the Zpacks backpacks. Their tents are great, and they definitely will last, well, depends on how you treat them, but they'll last more than a through hike. But their backpacks, you gotta baby them to get them through a through hike. On the PCT, several straps broke or almost broke, and the pads are definitely flattened out. So yeah, you really gotta baby it. I'll still use this for a while because it's still good, but probably not that much longer. We'll see. I will use it in 2023 though, because it's just super light to carry around. But that's my Zpacks Arc Haul. Overall, it did all right though. Like the shoulder straps work well, the arc straps work well, mostly because I knew to keep an eye on certain parts that would fall apart and prevent it with duct tape. But overall, worked out really well. Another addition in my backpack, I always had a compactor bag in there. I've used those Nylaflume bags before, but I've used one before, and within maybe 3 days, I poked my thumb right through it. They're so weak, I wouldn't have trusted through a through hike. If you are going to trust it through a through hike, you might need another as a backup, or a lot of duct tape. That's what I wound up doing on one trip. I had to duct tape the holes I put in there. But the compactor bags on the PCT, I had one throughout. On the AT, I had the same one throughout. No holes at all. They're super durable. And if you're going to use an arc haul, I think it's important to use it because the fabric will soak up water. And if you are going to hang an earth sack on the bottom of your pack, it's also important because it'll be wet and it'll soak in through the backpack, bottom of the backpack. And the compactor bag just keeps everything nice and dry. And I think it's very important, you probably heard it before, to keep your sleeping bag quilt dry. I usually keep my puffy in my compactor bag as well. Anything I want to keep dry, anything that's wet, I will keep out of it. But I think a compactor bag, it just gives you that extra assurance that things will stay dry and that you won't have a absolutely miserable night. So it's worth a little bit of weight for that. And that's it for my big three items. That included the backpack, how I carry gear like my fanny pack, sleeping system, quilts, bag liners, tents, things like that. The duplex again, if you want to go light, you can get away with duplex with two people as long as they're both comfortable with a tight amount of space. And it really helps having a 4-foot sleeping pad. And I guess experience helps. But I know a lot of couples get triplexes, which is good as well. It's just harder to find good campsites that are big enough for that footprint that you need. And like I said, the more space you get, the more you fill it. Like when I first got the duplex from the Altaplex, I was just spreading my stuff up everywhere. And then I realized I really have to keep that habit under control because once Tina's in the tent, I'd have to shrink all of that back down. But once you have that realization, you can kind of shrink it and stop utilizing all the space, and everything's pretty good. And plus, Tina and I, we actually strapped our sleeping pads together, and we would just sleep right next to each other all the time. So we didn't need that much space, really. But again, that's it. And my biggest bit of advice, if you're going out when it's cold, bring one of those liners because it'll keep you warm and it's a really convenient way to continue on as it gets warmer by just mailing it home. It's a little heavy, but it's an easy way to add additional warmth to your sleeping bag. So I'd say definitely bring one of those. And a lot of people are bringing heavy sleeping pads. You can get by with thin or light sleeping pads. And yeah, they're a little noisy in the beginning, but overall they're so light and so warm. I would definitely go with another Xlite again. So now if you have any other questions about my sleeping items like sleeping gear and tent, backpack, just ask below and then eventually I'll do a Q&A. But I'm going to go ahead and make further videos. I'm going to make one about my electronics as well and how it felt carrying a 3-pound camera on my chest throughout almost the entire trail. I did have to give it up at the very end, but it wasn't bad. Not as bad as you would think. Wouldn't recommend it, but not as bad. All right, take care, everyone. Y'all have a good night. Thanks for watching. And everyone else that's planning your thru hike this year, have fun out there. Have fun hiking, right?